Hey everybody, how's it going? Thank you for tuning in to This Is Real with Juan Martinez, aka Dr. Love.
And I'm Stephanie Ray. Welcome back, everyone.
Man, Stephanie, you know what? Every show keeps getting better. I'm excited about. We got a few letters this past week that were super dope.
Reading them and hearing from you guys.
Yeah, I should have remembered the name. I dropped the ball on that one, but I do remember the story. I remember the story. Mm-hmm. The story is he wrote us a letter and he was like, "Hey, I'm so excited because I guess when we were on years ago."
Right.
He was listening to the show when it was called Get Wrapped in Real Talk.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, man, you know, I guess he was going through the dials on a different day, and years later, like the dude's still incarcerated, and he's like, years later, he hears the show and he's like, oh man, it's Juan Martinez, you know, which was kind of neat because you know, I don't know, it was cool to know that our show is that impactful, you know, that our topics. You know, we try to keep it always as real as not as real. We keep it pretty real.
Keep it real.
You know, I feel like in the world everybody says keep it real, but it's like a lie.
Yeah.
You know, so here we try to just give you raw truth. Plus, our guests are always broad.
Different, and it's complete, like,
on the
diverse spectrum. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Just all sorts of, you know, we have professionals, we have new believers, we have pastors, we've got artists, we have authors, police chiefs, all sorts of stuff.
Chiefs, rappers, cooks,
everything.
Chefs, all of the above, fitness. So we gotta keep it. We're like Seinfeld. Do you remember? Are you?
I knew Seinfeld.
Yeah.
I didn't watch it.
It was like the show about everything. It was just the show about everything. It didn't have a
Kramer. I remember Kramer.
The show about everything. You never knew what you were gonna get. You know, just everything.
Of stuff. Yeah.
You know, and so that's us.
Yeah. So this week we've got special guests.
Special
family.
guests.
I think everyone, you know, is, but you know, we would like to have a little bit of background of who it is and why they're on the show.
I think God has a sense of humor. Because he's connected me with two people that are impactful in my life, that are good friends, that one was like ex-narcotics, you know, and then this gentleman here, who, you know, is planting a church. Just, they do all kinds of stuff. He's also they together collectively published Beyond the Yellow Brick Road.
Yes.
Did you know that?
Woo!
Come on,
So thanks to this wonderful publishing company and this amazing couple that now what we're doing with the radio, with the book, and being able to get it into the hands of those that are incarcerated, you guys made it possible. So
you guys.
Without further ado,
incredible. Dr. Scott Silverii and Leah Silverii.
Yeah. Welcome, guys.
Thank
you guys are
How are y'all doing?
Incredible, man. You guys look amazing.
No, we're excited to be here.
Hey,
this
okay.
is very cool.
So I wanted to just ask, before we kind of jump into stuff, I kind of, you know, I want to hit rewind. It's kind of like the movie that started and then it goes back.
Sure.
Okay, so that's what we're going to do a little bit. So tell us a little, we'll start with you.
Okay.
Tell us, what are some of the things you do today?
Okay, so I'm a full-time author.
Yep.
And that's my day job.
Yep.
I've written almost 80 books. I write mystery, thriller, suspense.
Yep.
Cool.
And that's what I do. I just make up stuff and kill people on the page.
And how many, you got about, what, 38?
39.
39 bestsellers. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's an accomplishment.
It is.
That's a big accomplishment.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's pretty good. That's really good. You got to admit that.
I think it's awesome. And it's funny that you said kill people on page, because obviously you think of Stranger Than Fiction, right? That's like the funniest movie ever. But that's me, you know?
It's very true.
That's
very true.
It's all this creativity.
Yeah.
And so, Dr. Scott, what is it that you currently do? And you used to be, tell us who you, maybe not who you, who you were in the standpoint of police chief and stuff, because I think that's kind of neat.
Yeah. No, I retired in 2015 as a chief of police after 26 years in law enforcement. And 12 of those I worked undercover, and 16 during that I was also a SWAT commander. And then in 2015, God told me to retire. And I had 4 years left to a full 30-year pension. My city had just given me a 4-year contract. All I had to do was breathe and show up.
Wow.
And I would have had a very lucrative retirement. And God said, "You're out. Come to work for me." And I did. I walked off with 4 years left. And I've been serving him ever since.
Wow.
That's
How long have you guys been married?
8 years.
8 years.
I keep having to think about it, like doing math. Yes.
Hey, so I want to know a little bit about, because you guys, you have books too, right, Dr. Scott? How many books you got?
I've written about 47 books.
Yo, it takes me like I'm like, oh, like hurting,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
I just here's a book, and here's a book, and here's another book, a book of breath.
Books,
yeah, they breathe books.
Like Scott's like brilliant on the nonfiction side of things. Like he really reaches, like especially men. He's got a lot of nonfiction books for men, and just conquering strongholds and past pain and all of these kind of things that men deal with. And
what's your thing? Like when you write books, what's like your common theme? Like what do you want the reader to get? Like
I really do. Reaching men is the first thing.
Okay.
Just helping them recover from their lives of past pain, how to break free, how to step into the power that God wants us to walk in.
It's really good.
Especially as men, as husbands and dads, and then also in marriage. Really want men to step up as the husbands that we were created and meant to be. So almost all my writing is focused to men, and collectively we'll write them marriage books.
Oh, that's what's up. I mean, you guys have been in like TV shows and everything, right? I just saw, what was it, Daystar and all that, talking about your marriage. That's pretty dope.
No, that was a cool thing. We've been on TBN and Daystar this year. It was
Drive Through History with Dave Stott.
And now this is real.
Yeah.
And now this is real.
Like that's the triumvirate.
That's like, that was okay, but now, this is real. Okay, so here's the thing, you guys. Obviously, you writing all these books. When you got married, were you guys like saved? Was it like, what did this look like? How long y'all know each other?
Going on 10 years now.
10 years.
Yeah.
Okay, and so was it, boom, you guys, a whole new world, you're like, wow, you're hot, and then everything's awesome.
Well, when you say hot, like we were a hot mess is what we were.
So yes, but different.
Yes. So yes, we were hot.
Yes.
But like the thing, like so when we met, Scott was newly chief of police, and he was at the top of his career, and I was at that time one of the best-selling romance authors in the world.
Wow.
And so I was at the top of my career, and so it just made sense that we should be at the top together.
Oh, nice.
So that was the outside surface of everything, but the truth is that we had a whole lot of like cases and cases.
Drawers.
Yeah, like in our baggage was nasty trash and garbage and
yeah, and at the top, so you guys are at the pivotal, but inside you're not at the top.
No.
That's good stuff.
And we were both saved. I mean, we were both believers, and I think that was the only thread that kept us tethered together. Was our faith in Christ. Yeah. Even if we weren't living for Christ.
Sure.
We
well, you guys
in Christ.
What it sounds like is you guys were saved, but you guys weren't healed from a lot of things, right?
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And we weren't. We were still walking in past pain and sin and all darkness, all kinds of things that we kept from each other until we got married. And then you can't.
Oh, not the classic boom. Hey, here you go.
And at the same time, we're dragging, all of our children along into this journey.
To this journey.
Yeah.
They're like, it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
How old were your children whenever you guys met?
Our youngest was 3. And then our oldest was, 11? Yeah. 10 or 11.
Wow. Still very young.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No, and then you have Max.
Yeah, he was right in the middle.
He was right in the middle. He has Down syndrome. And
everybody's 2 years apart.
Yeah.
Including Max.
And it was neat, though. I mean, as jacked up as we were, like, our kids were amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, my son...
You didn't jack them up yet. No. They got saved from...
That was amazing. I mean, just that. But we always talk about God takes care of every little detail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So my mother, who had passed away 20-something years prior, Max never knew my mom. And my nieces called her Nani. And I never heard anyone else called Nani. So when we started dating, and Max, he has Down syndrome, and he never understood really the concept that his dad has a mom. Yeah. He just knew the word Nani. Nani would love you. Nani. So after we met, and they were coming down to visit her kids and her mom for Mardi Gras to visit the first time, I'm like, what do I call your mom? I don't know. She goes, well, the kids call her Nani.
Wow.
No.
And I was like, God takes care of every
detail. Yes.
That's fire.
That is
so
amazing. Max
meets her, and all he knows is this is a woman that he's always been told loves him.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously we're gonna put some of these baggage out we're gonna put some of these
we're
bags
gonna
back
unpack
out.
These suitcases.
Yeah, well, because I feel like there's a lot of people who are trying to have a good marriage, right? And it's a lot of external things, right? Like if we get, and it's cool that you guys are like, we're at the top of our game. So it's like, if I get this job and you have a job and we both are like Band-Aid. Houses and we have this, then we're going to have the best marriage in the world. But that's not what you guys are saying. You guys are saying you guys were at the top of your careers, right? And now the work began. Tell us a little bit about that. Like what was some of the struggles early in your relationship?
Yeah, you know, for me, I came from a childhood of very dysfunction, very violent abuse, my whole life, my whole childhood. And I, you know, just that I hated being a victim. So my law enforcement career was probably centered a lot around protecting people from being victimized, as well as chasing down and hunting victimizers. But that left me with like a messed up inside. I was so messed up.
Because you were like an interrogator, right?
Yeah, that was one of my specialties, was interrogation, and just delving into the human psyche. Almost
super fun when you're married.
I can imagine.
Oh, wow. I'm just like, yo, that's a good book. Yeah. Good movie. Like, you know... just like one of those fiction, non-fiction.
Like, where does intense interrogation fit into your love language, right?
Yeah.
That's my love language, intense interrogation. It's not fun.
So you were going through abuse, all this stuff, so you're a cop, you're trying to protect.
Yeah, and then, you know, then I was struggling with PTSD just from violence on the job. And when you're in the culture, it could be law enforcement, it could be ministry, it could be any culture you're within, you get to normalize bad behavior because the culture protects culture. Well, when we got married, all of a sudden, she's an outsider to the culture, and she's like, something doesn't smell right. I know it's cool, but I'm a cop. No, it doesn't smell right. And then once we got married and I retired, I had no badge to hide behind. I no longer had culture to deal with to protect me.
You got some books in that too, huh?
Yeah, big time. Yeah. And it's not just for law enforcement, because we all do that. Yeah. We all hide behind a persona. We stick our dirty clothes under a rug for so long, and at some point, they've got to come out if you want to be healed. And so that's when we came together, that's what I was facing that. And you know, a big part of what I went through was a wilderness season. Like, and even Leah too, we all do that. We were so grounded in our profession. Like you said, if I get a new job or a raise, it'll make me, you know, I'll be better. But all, you know, and you take that away and then ask, who are you? And you don't have a clue. So I went through that. Like in my city, people would cater to me because of what I did. I was a chief. I retired. We moved to Dallas. I can't get a booth at Chick-fil-A. And what I realized was all my identity was not grounded in whose I was. It was what I did. So God had to heal me of that.
So that sourced you too. When you get stuck in that kind of place and in anything, that becomes your source. That's why when people get moved in position or something happens, even in ministry, people get bent out of shape. It's because they weren't really sourced in Christ. They were sourced in what they did. So if that changes, they fall apart, right? They're sourced in a relationship, and the relationship changes, you fall apart. It's like, oh, you really weren't grounded in Christ, you know? So
what did that look like for you, Leah? Because
well,
you too were at the top of your...
I was, but I saw myself start to shift because, I mean, we had everything that we could have wanted. We had money that we didn't know what to do with, and I mean, private schools and cars and houses and all of these things, and I was a single mom of 4 kids, and so, I mean, I've always been very independent, very strong. And I mean, I created my company, you know, I got where I was going, and I was a believer as a child. I grew up in church, but I left, you know, and so I had like kind of straying, and then when I had children, I'm like, oh, y'all need to be in church, you know, but I was not living for Christ, and so, but I found like the strong me after we got married, because Scott was so strong that it was a constant clash. And so we got to the point where I didn't even recognize the person I'd become because he was dealing with PTSD. And when that comes along, you're dealing with abuse, you're dealing with, I mean, we dealt with sexual addiction, infidelity. I mean, all of these things that just one after the other started coming. And then I was a victim. You know, and then you realize, like, I don't even know who I am. Like, how do I get out of this? You know, and at the same time, you have that anchor in Christ that's like, I don't want you to get out of this. Y'all fix this. You know, like.
So you remained because of the anchor in Christ while having to face these things. right? There's no running away. You know, for you to overcome, you can't run away from that.
Right.
Right.
And so how'd you guys do that? What was like some of your first steps, right? Like, because you're, I mean, right? It sounds like there was a moment where you're just like,
right. And I think moving to Dallas was the first. We took ourselves out of the environment.
Out of the village.
Yeah, out of the environment.
Toxic environment.
Yeah, because South Louisiana. I mean, I don't think Scott realized because he grew up there, but there's such a demonic oppression in that area, and like we feel it when we go down. It's almost like this thing's clinging to you when you go down. It's so strong because like the voodoo and the Catholicism, like all of these things, and it's just a hodgepodge of religions and demonic activity, and when we pulled ourselves out of that, and we're like, like we can kind of see clearly, breathe clearly, and then it was really like a year of like he was saying, that kind of that wilderness of like, all right, what do we do? And when everything kind of came to light, I think everything kind of came to light in Dallas once we had moved, once the veil had been torn off and we had some clarity, and then God started revealing things a little bit at a time. And really our church out of Louisiana, they were like, look, we're not going to let y'all. I mean, they didn't do what a lot of churches do, which is, that's messy. I'm stepping back.
Stepping back. They jumped in with you.
They jumped in.
Wow.
They did.
It's really good.
And so we went into counseling, and we recommend counseling for everybody. We love it.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we and again we never walked away from church together. We stuck in and we just clung to it, and even when it was super messy, we just kept going. We kept believing and believing. And you and I talk about, like, what does trusting God look like?
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that he's going to give you everything you want, or he's going to agree with you, or even that he's going to answer you. But just, you never turn your back on him.
That's it.
And that's where that trusting relationship is built. So no matter how bad it got, and it got bad, we never turned our back. We never turned away. And then really I think the key point for me was I went to Leah one day and I just told her, I said, not if, but when I kill myself, I'm not going to leave a mess for you and the kids.
Wow.
And to be able to come to your wife and confess and be open, like, if not her, who, and she's like, look, we're going to get you help. And that's where that professional Christian counseling really walked us through a lot of stuff, because you learn that you can't tell somebody struggling, snap out of it. You need to behave and get over it. You don't time doesn't heal all wounds. You've got to walk some stuff out, and sometimes it takes professional help, sometimes it takes counseling, sometimes just discipleship. But it's recognizing the level of help that you need.
It's really good.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back with Dr. Scott.
I got more questions.
Yeah.
And there's that hand. I'm telling you, you guys don't see it, but, if it wasn't for our media team, man, just...
Shout out to Marco, the media guy, and G.
They're just always, like, making sure everything sounds good, and then you always see that hand that goes, and you're on. It's just the hand, though. You don't ever see Marco.
I feel like the hand is better than the little red light that just says on air.
That's true. I like the hand. It kind of reminds me, like, of Thing. The little thing. He's just like, boom. As long as
I think of,
G isn't counting us off,
what's
but,
Home
it's a whole
Improvement
nother
with
story.
the guy, the neighbor that always
Wilson.
sees that.
Wilson.
I think of that when I
Wilson.
see Marco.
Maybe we should give him a little wall or something.
A little fence.
Yeah,
We'll
just
build
a
him
little
a little
fence.
fence.
Something really cool.
That's
and so, hey, we're going to jump into some segments here soon, but I wanted to just ask one more question when it came to, like, counseling. What are some of the things you guys have learned from that you didn't know then that you learn now by way of your experiences?
Because it's true. A lot of people hear counseling, they think that, oh no, we're fine, we don't need counseling. And I think, thankfully, we're, as a society, we're growing, and even as believers, we're growing more into taking away the taboo from counseling. So I think it's cool that you guys share about it.
Because in mine, you made it. Come on, 8 years, you're still going. You're still going.
I know.
I think for us was, number one, it was a Christian marriage counselor. The fact that everything
matters.
That matters.
Absolutely.
That really, truly matters. And going in, if you have to be teachable, because like I never forget the first day we went, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna play this guy. He was a younger guy.
Oh yeah, and you're the interrogator too.
And I'm gonna play. Look, I had on all my Harley Davidson.
Poor guy.
Poor guy.
But all the things. I mean, even taking an elevated position, so I have a dominant position over him in the room, and arms crossed when I didn't like what he said, and he spent a little time with her, then she left, and a little time with me, and I'm like, we're going to walk out of here, and he's going to tell her what a great guy I am. And then we're going to go home and get back to living. And I played the game. And look, at the end, he goes, man, you got a really dynamic personality. I'm like, yeah, thanks, right? He goes, but you can get up and leave and don't come back. I'm like, what? Like, I didn't anticipate that.
Yo, that's a good. I have to do that.
Oh my goodness!
But he says, you do not have a teachable spirit. He said, there's nothing I can or will do for you.
Write that down.
And he said, so go explain to your wife that y'all can't come back. And look, you go and the wife.
Oh, I'm feeling that.
I mean, the wife that you have crushed to dust with your illegitimate behavior. Now you've got to scoop her up and tell her we got kicked out of marriage counseling because of your unteachable attitude?
Yeah.
Look, you want to talk about conviction and humility? It was. And I had to call back and apologize to him.
And there's probably a few conversations that you're probably having a few conversations before he says that to you that says something like, if this don't work, we're done. This counseling's got to happen. And then he's like, go. You're like, no.
We knew it was, there was no options.
Yeah.
Like we had burned the ships. Counseling was going to be what got us to the next side of the island. And so to have been kicked out but the truth was, I was unteachable, right? It was self-preservation at that point. It wasn't healing for the marriage. It was, I'm going to get through this and still be me. Well, me wasn't working.
Yeah.
And so your advice, if you're going to go Christian counselor, and you've got to be teachable. Otherwise, you're wasting money and time.
Yeah.
What was that? Oh, go for it.
Oh, no. Well, were you going to go?
I was going to ask, because you were aware that you weren't being teachable, right? So how did you shift that perspective? Because I feel like it takes a lot of, humility to admit that. But then now what do I do? Dang, somebody told me that I'm not really teachable now. How did you shift your mindset or maybe your heart there?
It was conviction.
Yeah.
It was conviction that I knew, a lot of times when you get wrapped up in that past pain and addiction, like, you're doing wrong. You want to do right, but you don't know how to do it, right? Okay. And that's where the counselor comes, just those course corrections we talk about.
Yeah.
So it was that conviction that I was coming in there with the wrong attitude.
Gotcha.
It was also the conviction that I loved my wife, and when I said I'd do anything to save my marriage, did I really mean it? And I did mean it.
That's good.
So the first thing I had to do was change my attitude.
I hear surrender.
That's good.
He surrendered.
He surrendered. He went in there kind of like try to put the dude in there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But the dude flipped it on him. And before you know, it's okay. I give up.
That's it. Had to be in a submission hold.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, like mine a lot was for healing. Like I had to, that was something that we had to deal with my healing and in secondary trauma, because, like when we go and Scott has all these issues, whether it's the PTSD or the sexual addiction or all of these things, and it's like, all right, let's put all of our energy and focus into getting Scott healed.
Yeah. He needs help.
And he's got to be whole. And then at the end of it, we're released from counseling, and it's like, well, what about me? Because I've put all of my energy into that. And so my healing has been delayed. And actually, like, my healing took a lot longer. It took years, to get through all of that. And so it was really kind of like recognize, because, like, then Scott gets to the end of his, he's like, boom, I'm healed. Like, why aren't we, let's go. And I'm like, well, I'm not there yet, and it's like.
Wow. So giving her the room to heal as well is important. Yeah. But what are some of the things that they taught you? Like, how did you start healing? Like,
Well, forgiveness was huge. Forgiveness was huge. And not even just the understanding of what forgiveness is, that it's for me. It's not for him. It's for me. And then at that point, when I forgive, I decide the level of how far I want to forgive. Is it reconciliation, or is it like, I forgive you and we're done? Which could have been an option.
Yeah.
And then at that point, but then understanding that, forgiveness is never just a one-time thing. It is recurring. So, we'd reach a point, and I'd wake up one morning and I'd have, just these soul crushing feelings, like the memories or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's just like, and I'd have to forgive again, and you forgive again, and then you
70 times 7.
70 times 7.
So many times people think forgive and forget, and we're like,
yeah,
doesn't always.
And then you got to deal with the triggers, that trigger stuff, right? So
yes.
Yeah.
And I made a list of triggers and gave it. That's communication's the only way that you can really move past all of that. So if
communicating with him.
Yeah. And so if he doesn't know what the triggers are, and he doesn't always have to understand them, but I would give him a list of triggers and
stuff that got you going.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And just because it wouldn't take much to put me into a depression or into just kind of that. I mean, it was a crazy cycle of just up and down, like trying to deal with the emotions of everything that went with that. You know? And then at the same time, like the counselor gave me a lot of defensive tools, because he is a master interrogator and it is psychological warfare.
What did that look like? What did that look like what did that look like from an unhealthy place?
Yeah.
Because there's probably a healthy place for it somewhere. No? She's like, well.
Like, it's a trigger now. Like, I can tell, like, because
you can tell. Because you constantly got to protect your heart from it, right? Like, this isn't like
it's a flesh.
Done. If the flesh kicks on or he starts feeding the flesh for a while, bam.
Right.
No. What did that look like? Give us an evening. Tell us an evening of that.
Before. I mean, it was
before.
And even, for me, it was unnerving because I knew I had this specialized training. I'd made my career with this, and I knew the consequences. But when you're dealing in the criminal game and with bad guys versus good, the lines are clear. But in my real life, and it was like talking with her, it's like I never really cared what you said. It was always how you said it, when you said it, if you paused before you said it, if you looked somewhere else when you said it, what your hands were doing when you said it. And it was just a constant influx of information. And it really has nothing to do with her as the person. And I'm just evaluating everything that she's doing or not doing.
Yeah.
And so, and it's unnerving. I mean,
is that about right?
When she's simply like I'm hungry. Like, to me, that did not mean she wants food. I start thinking of how she said it, when she said, why did she say it now versus then? And so what does she really mean by when she says I'm hungry? Does it mean she wants to get away from me? Does it mean she's done? And it's unnerving.
Whoa.
And then my responses are, and a lot of that interrogation, and it doesn't have to, you don't have to be specially trained by the government to do that. It could, you could just be a dominant
I did that as a drug dealer.
Exactly.
Because I was trying to figure out who the person. I mean, it just was.
Well, that's what you do, and I didn't even realize. But like she was like, your face changes, and I know that my eyes narrow, my nose flattens, I move in, and that's just that feel like I'm not liking what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
I
thanks
need
for
you
the
to
tip.
change.
Hey, thanks for the tip. I'm like, hey Scott, right now you're sure asking a whole lot of Bible questions coming at me like that,
So it's just and it's a very domineering position, and it's like, we're going to talk until I get the answer that I want to hear.
And that crushed your spirit.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Big time.
It threw you into depression, as you were saying. Yeah. And so how do you today, because you recognize it, you guys just use tools, you guys communicate more and say, hey.
Well, I think I'm to a place too where where it was at, it would crush me before, I'm a lot stronger now, and I'm like, stop.
Now you're giving them the eyes like this, and you're leaning in, and you're like, what the heck?
Yeah. No, and it's just
she flipped the script.
Like, you can recognize it as it's starting to take form, just like because PTSD flares up the same way, I can always tell. You just learn we know each other well, you learn to read your spouse that well, and now it's just like, stop. Okay. Think about, and I don't put up with it. Yeah. Whereas before, that, I would just cower in the.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. So so there is a life after PTSD, no?
Yeah. It's a continuing walking out, and on that interrogation side, I guess, when God really healed us and really healed me, and you start thinking back, it's like, God, why'd you let me suffer? Why'd you let me go through this stuff? Why'd you let me? And then he, he's like, okay, take off that earthly crown. And when I'm ready to put it back on your head, I'll dust it off and I'll restore it to you.
Nice.
But now that ability to kind of cut through the BS is really when I'm ministering to men and counseling men. Yeah. It allows me to, okay, I got a few people I
need you to meet.
Yeah. Well, it is, right? Because mostly men, it's like, hey, how's it going? Okay. and we know right off the bat it's not okay. But it's really taught me with a heart of Christ, the heart of a father.
Right.
Is let's keep pulling those layers back off the onion.
Nice.
So in a Christian way, in a God gifted way, it's become very beneficial.
Yeah, I could see that because what the enemy meant for harm,
I was
God will turn
about
it
to say
around.
that.
God will always turn it around.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of times the enemy's developing you for the kingdom and he don't even know it.
I know, that's good.
It's just based on a lie. But when you finally realize the truth and you've been developed, you've really developed, because you were actually going after that wholeheartedly from a flesh place.
Right.
And so you try to get master at it, and then you get saved and it's like, wait a minute, I'm pretty good at this. I just got to do this way. And
exactly
now you're changing lives, right? Because even there's probably guys out there, when you write your book for the police department and all those people that you guys have done stuff for first responders, all kinds of stuff, right, where they're like, that's me now.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Big time.
That's almost a daily interaction with people around the country, and the wives will read, most of the time it's the wives that'll read our marriage book for law enforcement. It's called Uncuffed, Bulletproof in the Law Enforcement.
Where do they
marriage.
find that?
That's on Amazon, Barnes, everywhere.
Okay. Do you guys have a website or something for all your books and everything?
Yeah, it's at fivestonespress.org.
Fivestonespress.org.
And
she's
like, is that right?
Is that accurate?
But you'll get these emails and they're like, oh my gosh, like I'm not the only one.
Right.
Somebody else went through this, and that's really the most disadvantaged place for a victim, is to feel like they're the only one. Right? I'm the only one. I've got to be wrong because nobody else can live like this. And then when they realize, oh my gosh, like everybody's struggling.
Yeah.
And this is how you deal with it. So we get a lot of interaction from people.
It's really good. I like it. You want to go to another break?
Yeah, we'll be right back. We're appreciating this amazing conversation with Dr. Scott and
Leah.
I
can't wait
stay tuned.
They go back to the future. Wow, we're back. Man, this has been exciting.
Yeah,
I want to jump
great.
into the
Powerful.
segments.
Okay, go for it.
No.
Oh, okay.
Which one are we going to do first?
Okay, we're going to kick it off with Dear Younger Me.
Dear Younger Me.
So we explain that a little bit. So Dear Younger Me, we put you in the DeLorean. Take us back. We'll do it separately,
Come
right?
on.
We'll take us back to a younger version of yourself. Tell us what that looked like. Maybe it was, 20-year-old Scott, or, single mom Leah, whichever one.
Yeah.
What were you like? And if you could give them a piece of advice, what would it be?
Who's first?
You can go first. What advice? It could be
Where
when you were
would
in
you
your.
go?
It really
Yeah.
doesn't matter
It
when.
could be last
there's
year.
always something you've learned
No, you're right.
that you didn't know.
Yeah. I would go back to when I was first saved, when I first received
got saved.
Christ.
Okay.
I was 25 years old.
Okay.
And I was on fire for Christ. I was on fire.
Yeah.
And I knew nothing. I literally grew up in a godless home.
Yeah.
We weren't even CEOs. Christmas, Easter only.
Creasters.
We never ever went to church, and so it wasn't until I went off to college in Mississippi, the Bible Belt, that I first heard about Jesus Christ.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
So, but when I was saved at 25, I was so on fire for Christ, but I had no mentorship. There was no discipleship.
Yeah.
It was just, I would go in, and like my life, I was struggling, and I would show up at church, and it was a denomination, and they're like, how's it going, brother? And I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
And then I would sit and I'd be like, what do I do now? Come back next Sunday. So I'd come back next Sunday, and how's it going, brother? And during those how's it going brothers, like my life was just a wreck. I was trying to figure out Christianity. I started reading the Bible. I started reading like Deuteronomy, and I'm like, this is like freaking me out. The advice I would have given to 25-year-old me was to find a Christian man and become a disciple.
Yeah.
Allow someone to
Good.
disciple you, because eventually I got a little frustrated, and
Sure.
I quit walking. I just quit coming.
Yeah.
How's it going, brother? Just wouldn't feed my spirit.
Who knows how many things
Yeah.
would have been avoided just out of a simple,
man.
hey, I'm going to walk with another guy
Yeah.
that can teach me
Oh,
something.
big time.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of going back into the DeLorean, right? Because maybe you learned a lot of things that you couldn't go back, but somebody's listening right now.
Yeah.
And they could say, you know what? I need to do that. I need
Yeah.
to do that right now. I need to find somebody that
I know.
can teach me. It's a little older in their walk that can help me, so I don't wind up. Because you can save a
Walking
lot
away.
of time out of that one piece of advice.
I know.
You know?
No, it's,
That was good. That was
Yeah.
good. Now the DeLorean came back, and there's the guy. He's like, let's go, Leah.
No. Well, actually, mine's not too far off. I grew up in church, and my mom was church secretary.
Yeah.
And we talk about church hurt, and she was hurt in the church. I think I was 8th going into high school.
Yeah.
Like that transition between.
Right.
And we left the church, and we never went back.
Wow.
And that was such a pivotal year for me, like to lose that peer group, to lose all of those things. And, and if I could give advice, it would be to go back to that point. And
how old were you? About 13?
14, yeah.
Okay, so you'd go to 14-year-old. Where were you?
Yeah.
Where were you sitting?
Not good.
And so there you go. Now you're going to talk to her, and what would you say?
No, I mean, I would say to stay the course, to whatever you had to do, to stick with those friends, to stick with that youth group, to keep at it, to not let her hurt become your hurt.
Yeah.
And because it kept me out of church, and it kept my walk. I mean, I walked away from everything, and it changed the course of my life, because then I got into high school, and I started doing things I shouldn't have been doing.
You heard it. Stay the course. Don't grow weary.
Yeah.
Hey, as a couple, what advice? I'm gonna put you back in the DeLorean. You just got back, and I'm like, both of y'all, get back in the car.
All right.
And so I'm sending you back, and you, based upon what you know about your marriage now, speaking to yourself, newlyweds, what would you say to yourselves then?
You go first.
Well,
there's so much.
Many. Yeah.
So many.
But what good advice? Because maybe there's somebody's married out there, and they're like, or I'm about to get married.
Yeah, that they can relate, because you guys.
Because you could have did some things to maybe further the process, right? Without going through the stuff.
The blended family that you shared and stuff like that.
I think as we were listening, was when we first got married, we weren't doing it right, but we were going to church. Not that just showing up at a building. We were remaining faithful.
Yeah.
We never turned our back. And God told us, He said, you're going to have a ministry, writing books and helping marriages. That was right off the bat. That was a small seed that God planted.
Yeah.
And we laughed. We're like, seriously? Like, we're so jacked up. You're seriously going to trust us to help anybody? But God's prayers, those promises never go unanswered.
Yeah.
Those seeds always bloom and blossom in some way. So now you look years later, and we do have a marriage ministry.
Yeah.
We are helping people walk through life together. So the advice that I would have gone back and told us was, hey guys, trust in that promise. The promises of God are always going to bear fruit.
It's really good. It's really good.
Mine's a little different.
Yeah.
Mine would be, well, if I was giving it to, I guess, to both of us, I would say to go with your gut, because we delayed things a lot and just hit it and kept it under the he's a chief of police and I'm a New York Times bestseller facade.
Right.
And if we'd started digging
healing
things
early.
Out, yes.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. We would have, we lived in a lot of misery for the first year of our marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because I always think stuff like that, I guess, because, obviously the show, but I always think, and I always say, like, if I can go back and me and Ruthie, like, we did a lot of, like, soul searching and basically something that I just call the tree, which will be in the next book, right? And so just to really find out where some of those things happened, and I would have done that pre-marriage. You with me? I would have got into wrenches with, like, a counselor and just, like, both of us, let's just lay it out there, and had all of that, because I feel like then we would have went into the marriage, maybe we would have started off a little like, but I feel like we would have skipped a lot of the processes that we would have did while married. That if I would have known some of these tools, we probably could have went in a little easier, rather than it's over, and then try to figure it out.
Right.
Like I at least we would have had a hammer and a screwdriver. We didn't have anything, no tools. We're just like, in Jesus' name, we're trying to like figure out.
Divorce is so expensive.
Yes. Like, now I'm a Christian, I just can't leave you. It's like all these little things that I'm like, man, I just would have did counseling when we didn't need it.
Right.
But we did need it. You get what I'm saying? Like, when you don't think you need it.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I think even healthy people need counseling. I mean, it's you never know.
I need it now. Look, if you're out there.
Right.
We've got a few minutes left. We're going to jump into the next one, which is the struggle was real, right? So we hear a lot of people talk about the struggle is real right now, but we want to help the people who are listening that maybe can relate to what you guys are sharing, your life story, maybe your marriage or anything that you have shared before, and share with us something that you struggled with, but then how you overcame it. And it can be recent, it can be, in the past, anything like that.
Come on. Keep it real.
You go first again.
Oh my gosh.
Something you struggled with that you overcame.
Yeah. No, and I think because
how you overcame it.
I'll tell you, one of the things was when I was 50 years old, and I may have shared this story once, but when I was 50 years old, I'd been struggling with our marriage, struggling with PTSD, struggling with past pain, and it wasn't until I surrendered to that struggle. I was medicating my addiction. I was medicating my pain. And medication never heals. It just satiates the pain. And it wasn't until I was 50 years old that God had put into my heart and made me realize that the reason for a lot of my personal dysfunction was because I'd been sexually molested and just my whole.
We need a whole nother
life.
Show for that one.
Yeah. So and it was at 50 years old that I realized that my first time being molested was at 12 years old.
Wow.
And I hated the person that did that to me. And forgiveness, God showed me what forgiveness meant. And he showed me that forgiveness was for me, not for the offender. It doesn't mean what you did to me was right. It meant that I was free from the offense that had taken place. And it wasn't until I gained that freedom that I was able to start moving towards healing. So one of the things is like the struggle is real, and what I would tell people, especially people that deal with abuse as a younger person, is don't judge little you by today's you. Because I used to hate young Scott, right? I'm like, you little punk, how could you have been a victim? How could you let that happen? But that's me, Scott, talking. And I wasn't there back then.
Right.
That's
so
really good.
We carry a lot of guilt based on that self-condemnation.
Little punk, he's beating himself up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. We keep heaping guilt on ourselves for allowing something to happen that was out of our control back then.
That's super good.
Yeah, that is good. Oh, man, for me, the struggle is real.
The struggle was because you overcame it.
Thank you.
Or maybe you overcame it.
And maybe you're still overcoming
it. Maybe you're in the middle of a.
I think forgiveness is probably the key to all of it.
Okay.
Being the struggle was real. Because with me, because I like Scott said, I was crushed to dust. And it's I know that there's women like that out there.
Yeah.
That have gone through everything. Like you're dealing with other women. You're dealing with all of these things that are coming in, and you're and sometimes it's easier to forgive him than it is to forgive everybody else. And I really struggled with that, especially people that were friends who knew what was going on. And so it's like understanding that forgiveness, I had a litany in the shower of names, and I would have to speak them every day. And of all of these people.
Because you were upset that they did nothing?
Yeah.
Is that?
Or didn't say anything. They just pretended I was their friend, and but everybody else knew what was going on.
Wow.
Kind of thing. It's that that cop code of silence, and then you're dealing with other women at the same time, and it was really hard for me. It was easier to forgive him than it was to forgive those other people.
Wow.
And so I really had to just speak the names out loud, and there's power in the spoken word. Right. And so when you speak the names like that, I don't know how many months it took, but it took months. It didn't take just one time. It took months to just keep forgiving.
That's really, really good.
I love that.
Yeah. So you have another question?
No, did we have another?
Oh, yeah.
You want to do another one?
Yeah, well, no. What I want to ask is, what advice would you give, if you just said, boom, I'm going to give this advice to someone today, based upon what God has taught you, what advice would that be? Someone listening out there.
Well, from a man's perspective, I always... 1 Corinthians 16, 13, 14 really changed my life. And it's said, stand strong, be firm, act like men. And that's 13.
Yeah.
And I could do that. I could be hard and tough. 14 says, and in all you do in love. And I'd missed that part until I surrendered, and God, love wins. That's exactly what it was. So for men, the advice that I would is that you can be strong, stand guard, and act like men, but in all you do in love.
Man, he has that voice. You know, he has that voice. He kind of got me right there. I was like this.
You're like, okay.
I see.
Yes,
I see. Yes, I will love today. You know, he's like all burly, and then he's like, or husky. He's all husky. The big biker guy, right? And then he's like, hey. Then he goes, and then he's like, in love. So you would never think he's like this tall guy, biker looking, just from the voice. I love you, dude.
I love you too.
Okay. So Leah, what advice would you give? Any advice that is dear to your heart that you would give to another person out there?
Yeah, I think that submission is the key, and it's the word that's probably the most misunderstood.
Sure.
And I think especially for women.
Okay.
It's the most misunderstood because if you're submitting, we all have to submit to somebody.
Yeah.
And I think one of the best pieces of advice I got, for Scott was to honor him where I want him to be, not where he currently is. And
so good.
And and you have to submit to do that because they're not always honorable and they're not always deserving of your respect. But if you're submitting to the Holy Spirit, and you're really digging into that scripture about wives submit, and it's like we were talking about earlier, like he puts it in print because it's necessary, because that's not something we do well. And if you have that heart of submission where you can honor him where he deserves to, where you want him to be, where you see him being.
Show me what that looks like.
Man,
honor him. Honor him to where he should
my
be.
gosh.
What does it look like?
Like he's incredible. Like, if you saw you know him, so you know his heart.
Yeah.
But look, he loves people like I've never experienced or seen. The way that he loves men, the way that he has a heart for him, the way he stays up at night, and worries about them or cries for them, or
That's really good. You guys, we needed like a couple parts to this thing. We needed to do different things, but I'm pretty sure we'll see them again.
Layers. Yeah.
You know what? Thank you so much for joining us on our show. Where's your website? Where can they reach you?
It's ScottSilverii.com.
ScottSilverii.com and Five Stones
People.
Press. FiveStonesPeople.com. FiveStonesPeople.com. I'm telling you, they're incredible. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget that if you delight in the Lord, He'll give you the desires of your heart, which is really His heart. Go out.